Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current events.
What's up, y'all? What is happening in the world? It has been a long, like 4 months. It's been like 45 years on it has aged me, and it's been definitely a long day. We are talking with no one other than the esteemed, brilliant Dr. Sherice Janaye. What's going on?
Well, sis, I mean, we've had some victories early, so I am excited.
All right, good. Let's dig into it. So first of all, tell me, where are you and what has been the mood and the energy and the vibe leading up to this day, or just what's going on today?
Well, so it's crazy that you asked that, right? So as you know, my husband has a church in St. Louis. So first lady in St. Louis, in Missouri now. And there was a lot of people here. There was a lot of people in the St. Louis area who early voted, right? And so a lot of their voting had been done and got out of the way. And here in Missouri, there is a governor's race as well. So it's been very interesting here. As you know, I also am in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right? Where Gary Chambers was on Black people's necks about not going out to vote, right? Where the Black folks were trying to, Southern University did a second line to the polls, and
Oh, really?
yeah, where we saw those things right down there in Baton Rouge, and then of course in Huntsville, Alabama, students at Alabama A&M also did a parade to the polls. So what I do know and what I can see, and I think we're seeing across the country, right, is the level of activation from young voters. If you remember when we talked about right after her debate when Trump got that ass tapped. Remember we discussed, right, the fact that these pollsters are not taking into account these young people, right? And that has been a phenomenon that we have seen on Black campuses and white campuses alike. In Arizona, right, we are talking about the polls staying open maybe to even 9 o'clock
Wow.
Arizona time, right? Because Arizona's weird; they don't do that daylight savings time stuff. So, but the time in Arizona, they may end up staying to 9 o'clock, right? Open at 9 o'clock p.m. in their time zone, right? Because of the amount of young people we're seeing, right? We've heard the same thing about young people in Philadelphia, right? Or young people in Pennsylvania that we've seen really come out. So it is not surprising to me that we are seeing these things at HBCU campuses, at PWIs, because Kamala has in many ways spurred the attention of young people to get involved.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I did an earlier live. I don't like going live. It's probably like my third one, but I had to talk about my experience at my precinct, where I'm still trying to decompress from it, but was denied a provisional ballot at first, and it was simply because the person who was ahead, in charge of the precinct, did not know really how to work a provisional ballot, had never issued a provisional ballot. And according to her, which, I don't hold a can of whatever you call it to, is that she didn't know. But what she did admit, because when I started talking that you are in violation, that stuff, you know what I mean? She started like walking back and wanted to be like extra friendly and chatty. And she said that she had turned away a lot of young registered voters, or young voters who said they had registered because they were not on the list. So those of you who are listening, you are young and you got turned away or you were not on the list, please don't let that deter you. There's many more elections. And as we know, this is just the beginning, and the end for some. But I'm glad you said that. All right. So that is the mood. Now, did Gary Chambers, do you think he was effective in getting in Black people's behinds and going to the polls?
I know that he was irritating for me. I mean, and what I mean by that is I was like, okay, Gary, like I even posted on my Instagram, like, okay, Gary, I'm going on Monday. Like, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Because every day, right? But I think it was necessary, right? And
Yes.
I think it was extremely necessary. And I'm grateful for him, like all jokes aside. I'm grateful for him because what he did, I think, for a lot of Black people was saying, don't come and complain to me if you haven't at least taken this first step. And
Right.
he was very clear that voting wasn't the end all be all, right? He was very clear about that. It wasn't vote and then abdicate responsibility. He was like, you keep your throats on their neck, right? Does that make sense? So I think that I think it was eye-opening, I think, for so many people to realize, right, just the um just the amount of low voter turnout that's in the state of Louisiana.
Right. And you know what, Mr. Chambers and a couple of other people like in that belt, right? That Bible belt are, I think, represent like these, they're not young, but they're like, seasoned
Gen Xers.
Gen Xers, okay, yes, who are now returning back or are emerging or rising or ascending into these positions where they're being very, very vocal. I saw a couple of people from Mississippi, some folk from Memphis when I was down there in Tunica, at the conference. So that will be, to see exactly, because I know he ran. So let's see if he's going to run, because really, essentially, what you got to do, you got to grow your own votership in order to be successful in some of these places. So, moving on, are there any key legislation or measures that have been on the ballots wherever they are that you think we need to be paying attention to?
I think it is a huge sign to see in Florida that they couldn't get over the 60% threshold to make abortion a right that was enshrined inside of the Florida state constitution.
Oh,
They got close. It was 57%, but they needed the watermark of 60 and they couldn't get it over
wow.
time.
Ooh.
And so I think that's telling, right? I think that's telling for the fact that Florida is never, could not be seen in any shape, way, or form as a toss up or a swing state. It is no longer a swing state. It is firmly baked itself into the South. And in many ways, if we take this back, and I know this is maybe a bit for some, but let's remember how we got there. We got there really on the backs of purging Black voters in Florida.
In
Uh,
2000.
and if we take it a step further, it's the idea of not wanting Gilliam as the governor of the state, right? And if we take those steps, you can see how securely, in many ways, Florida has backed themselves into a conservative corridor, if you will. So I think that was something to pay attention to tonight. I think something also to pay attention to as far as races are concerned is this Black young woman in Ohio who's doing better than many have expected in Ohio, trying to hold on to, I think she's a freshman, 13th district. I want to grab her name and I'm blanking on her name, but I think that's something to watch. Emily Sykes.
Okay.
Emily Sykes in Ohio's 13th district. Right now, I'm looking at numbers that say we're at 47% reporting, and she's ahead. So I think that's a very, very good sign. I think that the fact that the governor in North Carolina, right, the Democratic governor in North Carolina won. I want to grab his name really quickly. I think that's a key. I think that's a key sign, and I think that tells us in many ways, or kind of tips us to where North Carolina could possibly go tonight when it comes to the presidency. So I think those are some key issues, right? Some not so great news, right? On I think this is the first state measure that has been on the ballot since the fall of Dobbs that we've seen. We've seen a state then in many ways reject those kind of levels of protections. So this is the first time we've seen it on the ballot lose. But I think the high water threshold is what made it lose, right? If we were talking at a 51% threshold, it would have cleared the bar easily. So I think that that 60% just it couldn't get over that threshold, and that speaks volumes to where Florida is, and how I think divided we are becoming in the southern states versus the southern states, and then the coastal states. I think also noticing that North Carolina, right, has reelected this governor, and rejected the crazy black man, as I like to call him, because I don't even like to say his name, who was the lieutenant governor running there. So I think that that's something of note. And then 2 black women in the Senate, right? Sending 2 black women to the Senate.
Very historical.
I mean, this is the first time there will be 3 black women in the Senate. There'll be 2 black women in the Senate, right? And so it is historical to see that, especially because I'm writing this book, right? And I know how long it has taken black women to get in there. And then it's also, I think, for me, important to highlight also Brooks, because her challenger in the Democratic primary had more money, and her challenger inside of the race, which was the former governor of Maryland. Both in both of those instances, right, there was more money raised on the other side, and she still won. So I think that speaks a lot to the power of the ground game, and the power that we see black women galvanizing on the ground without having necessarily the financial resources.
Yeah, I was going to say it totally. Now, maybe this is an anomaly, but it definitely challenged this notion that you have to have goo gobs of money to win, right? And people's power, the people power definitely can move things, you know, and does move things.
Well, no, I don't think that it, let me say, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let me say it that. And not only do I agree with you wholeheartedly, this has been, I think, the point of many people the entire time. The point has been, they can try to outspend us, right? And it doesn't work. And we already know that when it comes to Obama, because if we think about the Citizens United decision, right, that came down in 2010, it was over the election of Barack Obama in 2008, right? And then we get the Citizens United decision that essentially makes corporations people and then allows them to spend. And then the very next election, right after this decision, and in the midterm election, well, actually in the 2012 election, the amount of money that Obama needed to win, right, in 08 doubled, right, in 2012, right? And so it showed us there that they can go spend more money, right? They can go spend more money. It still doesn't necessarily guarantee them a win, right? And we saw that the Citizens United decision showed us that, and more money was spent in that election, double amount of money was spent, but Obama didn't out fundraise necessarily, right? His Mitt Romney, right, who had in many ways checks handed to them. So what I'm saying to you is that we've seen this test case on a larger scale when it comes to the Obama in 2012, right? The idea that there were multiple instances where Mitt Romney outspent Obama, if that makes sense, and Obama still won. And so it has always been about the people power, right? It's always been about the people power, and people, I think, get caught up in the electoral college, not understanding that it's still about the people power, because because most states are winner take all states. So if you win the state, you get all of the electoral college votes, and so it's still the people's power.
Yeah. So, I also wanted to kind of back up and just add something with Florida and the assessment. I think it also needs to be factored in these very stringent laws in terms of returning citizens and their right to vote. I think that has far more sway in terms of what it is than a Gillum loss. I think maybe perhaps his law,
His loss highlighted the issue.
Yes, the issue. Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
To me, they're connected, right? And I think that was one of the biggest reasons that he couldn't win, right? Because if you remember, during that time, there was a felon that was trying to get back those rights in the states for returning citizens. And if you remember, the the provision passed, but then they had to start paying all this restitution, right?
Right.
And to then get back on the voter rolls. Now, if you remember, simultaneously, we're also talking about the rise of Gillum in this era, who's
Right.
talking then against, right, them having to pay in many ways these absorbent fees essentially to be put up back on the rolls, right? Then we see a purge of voters, and what I'm saying is that they're correlative. They're correlative. They relate.
Right.
They
Right.
relate.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would, yeah. So I don't know. I think Florida is still going to be a contentious space. I know some really good people out there that have been doing work for a very long time. I think part of what Florida is going to have to do, but I mean, I guess we could say this for every state is that it really has to work on enfranchising voters. And that's what it is. I know that's a lot of work that needs to be done, Louisiana and Mississippi. But with all that being said, let's move to these major elections.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. How do you feel about it right now?
I'm hyped. I mean,
Okay.
and I'm hyped because I predicted, or remember I told you
You
earlier.
said if it's 7, she'll take 5. You said something like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I said. If there's 7 swing states, she takes 5. And with that then being said, it is looking favorable in a few places. It is looking favorable in North Carolina. It is looking favorable in Georgia. It is looking favorable in Nevada. And it's looking favorable in Pennsylvania. And I've said this to you several times. She wins Pennsylvania, that's the game, right? Because there's no pathway really for Trump without Pennsylvania. And so she wins Pennsylvania, that's the game. And so it is, to me, I'm excited because she's out. If we start drilling down in these counties, especially in these counties in these larger cities, right? These larger Black cities of Durham and Durham and in Charlotte and
Raleigh,
in Atlanta and in Raleigh and in Savannah, right? And Columbus, right? If you start looking in the counties surrounding those major cities, she is outperforming Biden, right? And so that is a strong sign. I think in many ways
I
that
think you said outperforming Biden. You meant outperforming Trump.
no, she's outperforming Biden.
Oh, outperforming. Oh, okay. Got you. All right.
No,
Okay.
no, no.
Okay.
No, no, no. She is outperforming Biden in previous years, right? So,
Got
for
you.
instance, in
All
a
right.
place like in a place like Fulton County, right? She's currently, or the last time I checked the numbers, she was outperforming she was outperforming Joe Biden, right? And so what I mean by outperforming is when you're in states that are swing states, and this is probably good to break into. I'm glad you asked this clarifying question. In swing states, what you really want to look at are 2 things. You don't want you want to look at the numbers as they tally. Yes, that's good. But what you really want to look at are the places in which you want to look at the places that are strongholds for a party and a particular party, right? You want to look at those stronghold areas, and then you want to compare those stronghold areas to what they did in the previous election.
Gotcha.
And what we're seeing almost in every place for Kamala in these areas in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, and in Georgia is that she's outperforming the numbers that Joe Biden did in 2020.
Got you. Okay. Got you.
Right.
So,
And let me also, on the flip side of that, you also want to look at the places of stronghold for the opposite candidate, in this case being Donald Trump. And what we're also seeing is that Kamala Harris is chipping away at leads in those areas as well. So it's not just she's up in her strong counties, it's also that she's gaining ground or closed ground in stronghold areas that Trump that Trump solidly had, right? And that again is happening in Georgia, North Carolina, and in Pennsylvania.
Okay. No, that's very good. So do you questions? One of the things that the Harris campaign did was give some money to the down ballot folks. Was that effective? And where are you seeing that was effective?
I think it's definitely effective. I think it's what allowed Angela Alsabrook to be freer in her campaign.
Mhm.
I think that it's helping Emily Sykes, right, in Ohio, a freshman congressional Black Caucus member, right, new to the area, or new inside of the legislature, right, allowing her to fight. I think that let me say it to you this way: the places where money was placed, I think in many ways was contested, right? Because there was a lot of Democratic fodder that said, put the money in the safe places of North Carolina, of Michigan, right? In these areas that they were in Nevada, right? Put it in these safe places. And I think that the Kamala Harris campaign said, let's take some risks here, right? And let's give a little less money here and a little more money here. And I think that that turnout, right, that we're seeing in Pennsylvania, right? I think that turnout of young voters, I think her speaking directly to white women, right, we're seeing that margin creep away, right? Trump is increasing with Black men, but Kamala is closing the gap with white women, right? And so I think that those investments have paid dividends, right? I think Kamala spending a lot of time in Georgia when the campaign told her maybe not so much, right? And I don't mean just in Atlanta, I mean across the state. I think Kamala allowing Tim Walz to spend more time in Middle America, right, in Michigan, in Minnesota, in these places, pays dividends, right? It was the idea of I'm going to lean into being blackety black me with Cardi B on the stage, right? And you go speak to white folks that'll hear from you better than they'll hear from me, right? And so I think that she was very strategic in messaging. I think she was very strategic in where they placed money, and they placed it in untraditional areas that Democratic mainstays may have disagreed with.
All right. Okay. So even though the fat lady has not sung, and so we don't know what the final results are, what do you foresee, or what do you think a Trump administration would look like, or a Trump win, not the administration? What
Um,
would a Trump win do, you think?
I think that, as one of my other scholars, colleagues, sister friends said, tomorrow we wake up to a different America, no matter who's elected.
Mm.
And I think we wake up to a different America because if Trump wins, and I don't believe he will, but if he does, we are going to have to rethink American exceptionalism.
Mm.
We're going to have to rethink the idea that we are the beacon on the hill, right? We are going to have to deal with that narrative because it will no longer be true. On the flip side, we'll be a different America when Kamala Harris becomes president of these United States, because we are going to then have the same conversation that race doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
That we have now reached a historic milestone that says that all is well that ends well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in some ways, we will have cemented that Black women have to come and save the country, as we've always done.
Mm.
And so either way, we wake up in a very new America.
Mm.
And I think the larger question is, does Trump's America make Black folks scared enough to really do something?
Mm.
And does a Kamala win finally convince us that white folks' ice is not colder.
Mm. Oh boy, you took it back. White man ice is cold. You took it back. This is what we shall see. And we will talk about what America looks like on the other side of these elections. Hopefully the creek don't rise tonight. But I will be plugged in. If you need to holla. But thank you so much for taking time out. I know you have 1,000,001 things to do and 1,000,001 people to speak with. So last thoughts, any last thoughts before we get off?
I was emotional when I went in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and casted my vote.
Wow.
For a little Black girl from Oakland, California, who in quest to find who she was as a Black girl, attends Howard University and is taught by some of the professors that taught me, that I got to place a vote for a person like that in my lifetime.
All right. Well, let's see if this different America is going to change that, amplify it. Maybe we'll have Sherice Janaye for president. You never know.
Girl, never, child. They don't want me. They don't want me, child. I ain't nobody's Kamala, okay?
Okay. All right. I'm gonna take it back. Yeah. Anyway, what did we used to call her? Kamala? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Kamala.
Kamala.
No. Let me tell you this before we go. I think this is so hilarious. Just kind of listening to a lot of the people's posts. We give Black people whole other names. We went from Kamala. I thought that was the woman's name, and it was it's Kamala, right?
No, we started out at Kamala.
Kamala. We started out at Kamala. Then we went to Kamala, and now they calling her Camila. Okay, right. I've been hearing Camila for so long. I said, Black people will give you a dang on name, and you better.
We just gonna call you what we call you.
Exactly, and you know who I'm talking about. But
and you know what that. Don't you even start there? You know what I said.
Yes. So anyway, we shall definitely see. I am so glad to stand in this with you, and we move forward. Thank you.